Hey guys, welcome back to another video of Legend of Runeterra. This time we are continuing the series of ranking the champions based on the region. Now we have the Freljord champions. Like I explained the last video, we have two rankings, one for support and one for carry. Carry means it's a good champion to have your deck around him. So it's you work, all the cards are meant to support this champion to have the win condition. While support champions are, after you finish your deck, they are not the main masterpiece. They are there to help your deck reach the higher level, but they are not your win condition in the game. So with Freljord, most of them are very defensive or very aggressive. This region has way too many control type, especially the frostbite, which reduces the damage of the enemy to 0, and quite few assists by giving empty mana to your ally. So let's start with Brom. So with Brom, okay, let's go with Brom. So the first time he survives damage, he will summon a Mighty Poro. If he survives 10 plus damage, he evolve, and he will, every time he take damage, he will summon a Mighty Poro. So a Mighty Poro is a 3-cost Poro with Overwhelm, which means when he the damage that exceeds the blocker's health is dealt to the enemy, and he has 3 HP, 3 damage. Brom also has Challenger, which means he can choose which enemy unit will block him, and Regeneration. It will fully heal at the end of each round. The issue with him is that he has 0 damage, so he is purely defensive. So you can't really, there is nothing intrinsic about him that will allow you to win the game. So as a carry, but with the fact that he can summon theoretically infinite Poros, he is okay as a carry. As a support, it depends on the deck. He can theoretically give you enough Poros to and units to win, to survive most damage, but 3 damage and 3 health are not that great, not bad, not great. Regeneration will mean he will stay healthy every round. So if you have another unit that need time to reach the late game, it's Brom is good, but you cannot put him everywhere. So you need a carry with him. Actually, I changed my mind. He is perfect support. You can add him to any deck and he will not be out of place. Even just for support and for challenger with regeneration, he is good. I take it back. He is perfect support. Okay, let's go to Anivia. So with Anivia, when she attacks, she deals 1 to all enemy and the enemy nexus. If she dies, she revive and transform into Anivia. Anivia is 1 cost, 0 damage, 1 HP unit. If you reach enlightenment or have 10 max mana, transform back into Anivia and level up. When she level up, every time she attacks, she deals 2 to all enemies and the enemy nexus. And when she dies, she go back into Anivia, and next round she come back as evolve Anivia. So as a carry, Anivia is basically a perfect carry. As long as you sorry, not perfect. It's depend on support. You need a support for her to reach the enlightenment stage. So she need to survive long enough until she can reach the late game. Once you reach the late game, you can attack. She dies. She become Anivia, transform back next round, etc. But if you are playing against somebody that have a spell that can deal damage to a unit, this will cut out all traces of progress. So you need more support and more cards specifically for her. And even then, it's not really that great. You cannot have an Anivia. You can, but it's not a Freljord only deck. It needs other units. So as a support, Anivia is basically don't bother. It's 6 mana, very late game. If you have a late game carry, you don't need Anivia. But if you have an early game carry, having Anivia is a waste of space, basically. So don't bother from my point of view. Now we have Sejuani. So with Sejuani, she has Overwhelm, which means deal to my blocker excess damage is dealt to I did to my blocker is dealt to the enemy nexus. Once you play her, it will give an enemy Frostbite and vulnerable this round. Frostbite means it will set a unit's power to 0 this round, but it can be changed afterward. Once you deal damage to the enemy nexus 5 different rounds, Sejuani will evolve, and each round, the first time you damage the enemy nexus, she will Frostbite all enemy. So this is one of the most frustrating champions to play against once she reaches the late game, and she is a perfect carry because you always have free damage to the enemy nexus, to the enemy units or the enemy nexus. Of course, if you add with her Ashe, that is basically a GG. But as support, she depends on the deck. Which, with that I mean, you need her to be with somebody that can deal damage to the nexus without her intervening. A good trick to do it is once you summon her, you will Frostbite an enemy and give him vulnerable, then attack with her on the left. So even if you defend with your other units, you can Frostbite everybody directly. So there is not a lot of counterplay to Sejuani, contrary to Anivia. Okay, now we have Ashe. When Ashe attacks, she Frostbites the strongest enemy. So she set the power to 0. If you reduce the power of 5 enemies to 0, so not only Frostbite, but even if you switch an enemy unit's power with your own, there are quite a few ways to do it. She level up, and when she level up, she create a crystal arrow on top of the deck. I mean, the next round you'll get a crystal arrow, a 2-cost mana spell, which frostbite an enemy and all other enemy with 3 or less health. Then you can draw 1. When Ashe evolve, she still have the ability to frostbite the strongest enemy when she attack, and enemy with 0 power cannot block. So if you can frostbite all your enemies, it's they cannot block, so you can attack the nexus directly. As a carry, you can play Ashe on her own. You don't need support with any other champion or any other gimmick other than herself. But as a support, she depends on the deck. So she need the deck need to have a lot of frostbite, not just herself. Because if she is alone, even if she frostbite an enemy and somehow manage to get an evolution, making one enemy cannot block is not really that great in most cases. It can be useful sometimes, but it's 1 in a million. Okay, let's go with Udyr. Udyr has the ability of stance swap. When summoned or strike, he creates a stance swap in hand. If you already have one, reduce its cost by 0 to 0. Once you played 3 stance swaps, he evolve, and every stance swap that he creates by summoning or strike costs 0. It has the same effect to either create one or reduce the cost to 0. But each one you play, it will give Udyr +1 attack and defense for each one this game. A stance swap allow you to give a stance to an ally, either Bear stance to give him +2 attack and defense, Wild Claw stance which will give him +2 damage and overwhelm, so he can deal damage, the excess damage to the blocker is dealt to the nexus. Boar stance which will give him +2 defense and regeneration, which means he can heal fully at the end of each round. Or Ram stance which will pick an ally, deal 1 to everything else. I think Udyr, it will be the first one that we have as perfect support and perfect carry. He is basically infinite scaling with very minimal chance of counterplay, because in his deck every stance, even if it's not on him, will make him stronger. He can easily give himself regeneration, then give himself overwhelm, then give himself +2 attack and defense, +2 attack and defense. Each one of them will give +1 attack and defense due to his passive. And since he can create the stance swap every time he summoned or attack, you don't really need any other unit to create stance swap for it. It's good if you do have it, but it's not mandatory, which is why I don't see any issue to put him in any deck. I even put him with Fiora, in some video with Fiora, in some video with Viego, stuff like that. And it always works great. And even if your carry fail, he can become the carry even in unrelated decks. So highly recommended. Okay, let's go with Lisandra. So with Lisandra, when summoned, summon a frozen thrall and advance it to 2 times. When to evolve, she needs to summon 2+ ally that have 8+ cost, and when she level up, she creates a Watcher in hand. Once she level up, your nexus is tough. When summoned, summon a frozen thrall, advance it to 2. At the start of the round, create an ice shard that costs 0 mana in hand. Frozen thrall is a landmark that have countdown 9. If it is with Lisandra, it becomes 7. After the countdown finish, she can summon Frostguard Thrall, a unit with overwhelm, 8 damage, 8 HP and cost 8 mana. So 2 Frozen Thralls will allow her to evolve, and it is a powerful unit, but the very broken ability are Ice Shard, which will deal 1 to everything, including the enemy nexus. But since it will give tough to the enemy nexus, which means it take 1 less damage from all sources, and she is tough, this is basically free damage to the enemy. With the Watcher, it is a 17 mana cost unit. It costs 0 if you summoned 5+ allies that cost 8+ this game. So the only way to summon him is either with a landmark that can or a unit that can reduce the mana cost, or to summon 5+ ally that cost 8 this game. Once she attacks, it will obliterate, which means completely remove from the game. It doesn't cost last breath and cannot be revived. So it will obliterate the enemy deck, leaving 3 non-champion unit only. So after 3 rounds, it's a win to you. It has 11 power, 17 health, so it will not die anytime soon. So with Lisandra, she is not worth it as a support. Really not worth it. You need way too many conditions to manage to survive. So, and it will take a place of 2 units on your field just to have her evolve. So really not worth it. But as a carry, she can be considered as a perfect carry. If you make a deck around her, it's quite easy to win the game. You have very easy to understand win condition that you only need to summon it and attack for it to be implemented. So no issue there. Okay, now we have Orn. With Orn, he has Staff, which will mean take 1 less damage from all sources. When you play him, he can equip me with an exact copy of an ally's equipment or the strongest equipment from hand. So when he attacks, he can forge himself twice, which means he will give his equipment plus 1 attack and defense 2 times. If he has an equipment, so if he does not have an equipment, it is given to Orn himself. The advantage of this is that if Orn is dead, the equipment can be given to somebody else and he can still have his effect. So to level up, he needs an ally has struck for 8 plus damage in 1 strike. So he needs an ally that has 8 damage striking this round. Once he evolves, when he attacks, he will forge himself twice. This is the same thing. Then summon an attacking Spirit of the Ram with his own stat. Spirit of the Ram is a 4 cost unit that has Overwhelm and Ephemeral with as a base 1 attack and 1 defense, but this will always change to all stat. So it's basically double the damage that you have plus Overwhelm. So with Orn, as a carry, you can make quite a few decks that maximize his effect. There is the only issue with him is the high mana cost, but he is in the Freljord, so there are quite a few ways to reach 7 mana quite early. But as a support, he depends on deck. So if you are playing him with Jax or with Darkin units or any deck that need equipment, he is good. If you are playing him with high power units like Lurk or like Damacian or something like that, he is also very powerful. But if you are playing him with spellcasters or playing him with spam units, he is basically not worth it in that case. He can be a good meat shield, but Brom for 4 mana will be a better option. At least he has regeneration. Or Udyr. He has regeneration and he can reach the same stats as Udyr. Okay, next we have Trindemir. So Trindemir is an 8 mana cost unit that has Overwhelm, which means deal the extra excess damage dealt to my blocker is dealt to the enemy nexus. If it is going to die, it survive and level up. It will go from 8 power 4 health to 9 power 9 health, Overwhelm, Fearsome and Tough. So not only will it have more health, more power, it will be harder to kill and cannot be blocked by somebody that has less than 3 damage card. So Trindemir as a carry is not that great. There are way too many cards that can completely shut him down. Any stuns, obliterate card, kill card, stats are not great for something that costs 8 mana. Yes, you can reach the 8 mana quite fast, but he doesn't bring anything substantial on his own. So it's basically a stat check. If the enemy has more health and more damage than you, he win. If you don't, you win. He really need a support to protect him. And the issue is compared to Udyr or Ornn or even Sejuani, is that if you kill him twice, that's it. But he cannot be stronger than he already is. So you need to add cards on him for him to be better. As a support, he is not worth it. You can argue for him to be a perfect carry, but the fact that I didn't see him for over a year of playing right now can tell you he's really not. As a support, an 8 mana cost that is only stat check, it's way better to put Udyr or Ornn in his place. Okay, finally we have Trundle. So Trundle is a 5 mana cost, has regeneration, which means he'll fully at the end of each round. When I am summoned, he will create an ice pillar in hand. Once you play the ice pillar, an 8 mana cost vulnerable unit, which means an enemy can challenge this unit facing it to block. He can refill 8 mana back. So if you reduce the cost of this card, you can get 8 mana for free. But when you play or round start, give the strongest enemy vulnerable this round. So it's vulnerable, but you get to give the strongest enemy vulnerable, so you can choose who to sacrifice or how to kill it. Once Trundle evolves, every time he attacks, he gets +1 attack damage for each 8+ cost card that you behold. Behold means is either on the field or in hand. So as a carry, he is perfect. There are not perfect. He needs support. Actually, he needs support. Yes. So he needs support because 8 for him to maximize his effect, he needs to have a lot of 8+ cards in his hand. With the Freljord, there are they are not that many, so you cannot maximize it as much as you want. And if you have a lot of 8+ cards in your that cost 8+ cost cards in your hand as a 5 cost unit, so it would be really hard to keep them and play, because you cannot it take place in your hand that you cannot summon other units to survive, and it can be done but not really that great. Actually, I prefer to play him with Lisandra, since the thralls are all 8 mana cost, so quite a good combination. As a support, he depends on the deck. He is not bad, since he already give himself an 8+ mana card, so he will always get +1. He has regeneration, so he can be good shield, but it can, if you same issue as Ornn and Sejuani, he cannot if you put him as a support, so you don't have that many 8+ cost card, he will not be able to maximize his effect to carry for you the game. Well, that's it from my take on the Freljord units. Please tell me what you think. What is your take on how they should be implemented? Any changes that you will implement yourself, or any idea how to improve my ranking? Put it in the comment and see you next time. Bye.